constantly be being updated or being developed differently.
Are there
It's
other,
scarcely be embraced by the human mind.
Mm-hmm.
No one's gonna do that, no one wants to do that.
No one wants
are there other places where the Constitution is unclear? Are there, because Theron is saying that it's an outline. These framers, they were providing us with a frame. I really think that's a nice comment. Are there other places where it's unclear?
Yeah, I mean, we can think of conflicts, if we can think of any conflicts about certain amendments, I'm sure we can think about where it's unclear.
Are you asking specifics, or are you asking as a general statement?
I think I'm asking for two reasons. I'm asking us to think about that as we move forward. But maybe, let's see if we can come up with one example where it's unclear.
Like,
Gun legislation.
yeah, gun legislation, but also the document we read the other day about marijuana and things like that. It's unclear to state governments versus federal governments what overpowers what and how to go through those situations where state government has more power in that situation.
That's a good example.
In the Second Amendment, it says a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. That is saying that the Second Amendment protects a well-regulated militia.
Mm-hmm.
Then later in that it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms. So like it can be argued either way, and it's not exactly clear. Is it a regulated militia or is it just people owning guns?
And what did the framers think? It doesn't matter what they think.
That kind of relates to that comic we looked at really, really early on with the first 10 multiple choice questions we had, where it was politicians talking about the Second Amendment, and they were saying like, oh, like is this saying they can own an AK-47? And it was like, no, future generations won't be that stupid to like use those inappropriately or something.
To like kind of twist the Constitution into how it benefits people. I think that's what the point of the comic was. Like, should we add in something about not owning AK-47s? And then the other guy, framer says, no, future generations won't be that stupid or something. But obviously it's come to this point where each little word of the Constitution is nitpicked for anyone's benefit, and it can be used to challenge and support legal arguments.
I have a question that there's not an answer to. I guess it's not clarifying. Thank you, Theron. Do you think like if there were a way to have like a constitution that outlined every single possibility, would that be better than like this framework? Because then there would be no question if it was given to us.
Well, are the laws in that Constitution just or not?
That's a whole other
Are
question.
you
Let's say
saying, like,
hypothetically,
Can I
yes.
say hypothetically, like, this Constitution would be perfect to the people? Like, it would state absolutely every situation you need to know, or every detail you need to know?
And is that also talking about the 10,000 page Constitution no one wants to read?
If we bring it back to the text on 135, I'm just going to read what Sam read again because I feel like that's really important. The second paragraph on 135. This provision is made in a constitution intended to endure for ages to come, and consequently to be adapted to the various crises of human affairs. Thanks for reading that, Sam. I feel like that's worth reading many times because that proves that there's no way that there could be a constitution that would like prepare us for the nation, for our ever-changing nation.
Yeah, exactly. We're
So-
always changing. Nothing will be the same.
The necessary and proper clause relates to this, which grants Congress the right to carry out necessary and proper like acts of legislation so that they can do what their enumerated powers allow them to do. Anyway, so I think, yeah, the idea of a constitution that would outline every single power of Congress in relation to this, in relation to any issue, is just preposterous.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's literally
It's
impossible.
literally impossible. You can't predict the future.
This is sort of related. So I was thinking when I asked that question about are there places where the Constitution is vague, and I'm just going to read a section of the 14th Amendment. Now that was added later, 1868, but even the way that's written it's on page 45, if you're interested, the bottom of 45. This is famous, right? No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So is there any part of that that's unclear to you?
And how does that apply to immigration?
Wait,
Now.
So it's on the bottom of 44 and 45.
Oh, got it.
So this idea, like, a due process of law.
Yeah.
What is due process of law?
Isn't it? It's like sometimes referred to like the second Bill of Rights, kind of along those lines.
This is part of
Well,
those.
like, no, like,
Mhm.
hold on, gay minute.
Does anyone know what due process of law means, or can someone define it for that group?
What that means to me is just like the political process of like changing the Constitution, or or like on a personal level, which is this is saying it's like like going on trial,
Right.
or like having your house foreclosed upon, because like you can't just send a police officer to take you away from your property and seize your house. Like you have to go on trial, be convicted, then they can take your house away.
It's like, yeah.
Well, what I'm hearing right now is all of this is really up to interpretation. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And a big part of that interpretation, at least in this case, was the meaning of necessary. If we can
Great,
focus on
great
that.
pulling it back to what
Yeah.
you thought in.
But I have a quote here from 134 to 135. Does it always import an absolute physical necessity so strong that one thing to which another may be termed necessary cannot exist without that other? We think it does not. So they're really asking, what do you think necessary means? Or what does it mean in the terms of the necessary and proper cause? So does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Chip, I think you should share.
So we discussed this at our group during the teamwork questions, and what I kind of got out of this was that there's one version of necessary that is like black and white, and he describes this at the bottom of 34, that last paragraph. He asks this question: does it always import an absolute physical necessity so strong that one thing to which another may be termed necessary cannot exist without that other? So that's the black and white version. And then he goes on to say, on 135, like kind of in the middle here of that top paragraph, a thing may be necessary, very necessary, absolutely necessary, indispensably necessary. So basically there's one version where it's like, this has to happen, or this will happen. Well, there's another one where it's like, it should happen, which is more of a gradient, because he highlights the different degrees of necessary.
There's also a little, on page 135, something right above what Chaitin just read, where it says it admits of all degrees of comparison and is often connected with other words which increase or diminish the impression the mind receives of the urgency it imports. So it's kind of also saying that necessary is like an emphasis for a lot of situations, for the mind to understand the urgency or what it's saying.
How does this relate to upholding the constitutionality of the Second National Bank? I'm not sure. These definitions of necessary, how does that relate to this case?
Can you repeat your question? I didn't quite understand
Absolutely.
that.
It's actually the second part of question 4 on our prep sheet. How is Chief Justice Marshall's definition important to upholding the constitutionality of the bank? So this case is about whether or not the state of Maryland should be able to tax the second bank, national bank in Maryland. And he's arguing that they shouldn't be able to tax because he says on the final page, the power to tax involves the power to destroy. So how do his definitions of necessary relate to defending Congress's right to have a national bank in the state of Maryland?
So if you go on the first part, where it has like the stuff before the text, and you go to the facts of the case, it says, in 1860, Congress created the Second Bank of the United States after the charter for the first bank expired. Congress did this to help it conduct the business of government, such as collecting taxes. So, based on the language here, it says it did this to help. So, what I get from this is that it was necessary, but not like black and white necessary. Like, obviously, a bank could be propped up somewhere else, but taxes do need to be collected for the prosperity and functioning of the government.
So what I hear you saying is his second definition of necessary, the more gray, like it should happen, but not the not the form of necessary, that means it has to happen. That relates to his logic in defending Congress's right to have a second national bank in Maryland. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess, because
It's not like
This
it's
doesn't-
required to happen, but it should happen. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Does that make
I
sense?
think I agree with that.
That sort of makes sense. The second definition of necessary we talked about for Chief Justice Marshall.
When you were going to.
Could you repeat your second definition of necessary, that the gray, not the black and white?
Yeah, so I kind of described it as a gradient when he's using different language in front of the word necessary, such as very, or indispensably, or absolutely. So in this case, it definitely isn't like absolutely or indispensably, I think,
Mhm.
because obviously you can make a bank somewhere else. But if you were to do this, you were to put a $15,000 tax on the bank, it's going to destroy the bank, and it's really going to impede on the process of effective government.
Well said.
Thanks.
And that is kind of what Marshall's decision was, is that